Okay, it says the webinar is now streaming live on Facebook, and I'm going to my phone to see if I can see myself, which is always a great thing to see if I can see myself. And then I've got the validate. There we are. All right. Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome. It's Tuesday, Facebook Live. It's 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern, midnight in London, and midnight in Poland. And we have my very good friend and extremely lucky to have as a special guest today, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, who lives in England and is at home in England, who stayed up late to do this for us today. So hello, Dr. Natasha.
Hello. Hello. Nice to see you again.
Thank you. It's very nice to see you. And for everyone that's out there, let me tell you, Marzi and I had the most wonderful experience recently when I was in, as many of you know, I was in London a week ago and did 4 lectures there in 6 or 7 days. But before we started our lectures, Marzi and I had a chance to visit with Dr. Natasha on her organic farm. And it's out in the country. It's beautiful English countryside that you could, imagine like from the movies or something. But when we left there 2 days later, Natasha, I didn't tell you this, but I was reinforced that it is possible to live a natural life. It is possible to be in harmony with the planet. And that's something that most of us have never experienced. We've never witnessed it. We've never seen it for ourselves. But what you are doing there as a model for the planet, and I'll just tell everyone that you are teaching how to live this natural life. So could we just take a minute and talk about your farm and what it is that your vision was and what you're doing there?
Well, we bought it 6 years ago, and it was conventionally farmed for 100 years probably. So there was no soil on the farm at all. All life on our planet begins and ends in topsoil. That is the most precious part of nature. It's a microbial community living in its own organic matter, where all the plants grow from, and then all the life feeds on those plants, and there's a chain of life, a life circle. So we spent 6 years creating soil. And the best way to create it is through having lots of animals and birds.
May I interrupt for a minute? Because some people won't understand this. You're differentiating between soil and dirt. So there was dirt on the farm, but there was no life in the dirt because the insecticides, the pesticides, the chemical fertilizers over the years had wiped out almost all of the microbiome.
That's right.
And so there was something that looked like soil there, but it really wasn't soil that plants could thrive in. Am I correct in how I'm looking at that?
Yes, it was dead. It was stones and clay. There were no worms there, no life at all. And it was even impossible to dig it. It was impossible to stick a spade into that soil, to plant anything, to dig anything. The only way to create soil on our planet is through grazing animals and birds. And that's how topsoil has been created on our planet, through grazing animals and birds. Because what animals do every time they deposit their manure and their urine, they populate the soil with microbial community. They drop microbial community in its own, they drop their microbiome, their gut flora. Because our gut flora is the soil inside us. And that's where the roots of our health are sitting. And
that's why this is, excuse me again, sorry, that's why this is so important for all of you, is that what she's talking about in the soil and what you hear the results have been in 6 years is what we all have to do in our guts. It's the exact same concept. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but please.
Exactly.
Please.
Industrial agriculture is causing desertification on the planet. In fact, it is a scientific fact now that every desert on our planet has been created by human activity, generally through arable agriculture, through growing grains, plowing, growing grains. Because every time we plow the soil, we disturb it, we destroy the microbial community. Because at every centimeter of soil, a different microbial community lives. When you plow, when you dig, when you turn it over, you displace all those microbial communities. You put them in disarray, you destroy them. And as a result, they die. So plowing, tilling, digging soil is basically destroying the structure of the soil and destroying its microbial community.
So for everyone whose mind is saying, but we've always plowed the soil, that's just like someone saying, but we've always used Tupperware in the kitchen. Now you know about Tupperware. If you've heard me speak before about the phthalates in plastic storage containers leach into the food and it's toxic and our bodies accumulate it. What Dr. McBride, Campbell McBride is talking about is the exact same concept with how humans are dealing with soil.
We are turning our arable soils into deserts all over the world. In the Western world, certainly in this country, in America, and many other Western countries where we see these great big industrial arable fields, the soils are dead. It's just the physical matter that is holding the roots in place, while all the nutrition for the plants comes from the chemicals that are sprayed on the soil. All the old farmers around us, from the beginning, we befriended them, and they all said that when I was a boy, things grew on our fields without any chemicals, and there were worms in the soil. Now there are no worms, and if I don't spray chemicals on the soil now, nothing will grow on these fields at all. That is a desert for all intents and purposes. And that is what people are creating in their own digestive systems. Because your gut flora is the soil inside you. By taking antibiotics, by eating foods full of agricultural chemicals, which are antibiotics in their nature, most of them are antibiotics in their nature, we're creating a desert inside ourselves. We turn the soil, the gut flora, into a desert. And because the roots of your health are sitting in that soil, your whole body withers away because it is trying to grow in the desert.
And we become more dependent on medications or some heroic interventions because our rich soil is being destroyed. I didn't start off the way I normally do, so I have to back up for a minute and say hello. And the first person I say hello to is my daughter's watching. And that means my granddaughter's watching. Hi, Mia. Hi, honey. I love you so much. That's my 2.5-year-old granddaughter and my daughter, of course. Hi, honey. I love you too. So
that's lovely.
And Jocelyn's here from California, Kelly from Indiana, Missy's back in the house, Cricket's from Georgia, Kristen from Pennsylvania, Wanda says hi from Long Island. Nice to see you again. Thank you so much. Sophia's here. Always a great pleasure to have your guidance. Thank you, Sophia. And Tracy's here. Listening to Dr. Natasha is giving me goosebumps. Thank you, Tracy. Me too, actually. I'm not saying that. I'm getting goosebumps listening to her talk about this, and I get really excited.
Because that's good to hear.
Yes.
Right. So on our farm, the first thing we got chickens, and then we got pigs, and then we got cows and goats, and we planted about 1,000 trees here. And we've been hauling in manure. Yes. Manure is the most precious stuff for our planet. The most precious thing that comes out from the other end of the animal, because it is the microbial community from inside the animal, the gut flora of the animal coming out in its own biological matter to inoculate the soil, to put the microbes back into the soil. The dying vegetation, the dying plants, on the soil, they provide the organic matter for those microbes to work on and to grow in. But the microbes themselves have to come from the animals. So the arable agriculture is the major cause of global warming. That is the fact that majority of people on the planet don't know. Because the biggest reservoir of carbon on the planet is humus in the topsoil. Humus is a carbon, it's almost pure carbon. And it's a carbon polymer. It's a very stable compound which can hold carbon in there for hundreds of years. Every time we plow, till, apply agricultural chemicals, we destroy humus and we release carbon into the atmosphere. As I say, majority of humanity has no idea that the biggest contributor to global warming is arable agriculture. Growing grain and soya and cotton and corn and all the other things for us.
I want everyone to hear this. And by the way, I'm thinking if you're getting goosebumps listening to this, send a message to your friend, your best friend, say, turn on Dr. Tom right now on Facebook to listen to this. Because if it's giving you goosebumps, everyone in your world needs to hear this. I mean, it's given me goosebumps to hear it, and I've heard it before, but I'm hearing it again. I mean, Marzi and I were lucky enough to walk the fields with Dr. Natasha and see what she's doing and see how she's modeling how we save the planet. And that pearl that she just gave us, that the worst contributor to carbon toxicity in the environment is plowing the soil. And just read the studies on this. Dr. Natasha, if someone wanted to look into this a little bit more, where would they go to look?
Well, look at Alan Savory work, Alan Savory Institute, Savory Institute. What Alan Savory did, he's an amazing pioneer, an amazing man. He has studied grasslands in Africa. He worked in huge national parks and national reserves in Africa. Because through traditional agriculture for thousands of years, this opinion appeared that animals cause desertification, that animals destroy pasture, that animals destroy land. How did that happen? Because for thousands of years, what did people do? They build a fence, they put the animals in there, and forget about them. Nature doesn't do that. Nature doesn't build any fences. In nature, animals are free and they keep moving across the land. If you build a fence and you lock the animals in there, a herd of cows, for example, or sheep, in that meadow, animals have their favorite grasses, their favorite plants. So they would start eating on their number one favorite plant, and they'll eat it and eat it and eat it until they destroy it. Then they'll start on their second most favorite plant and eat it until they destroy it. Then on the third most favorite plant. And in a few years, what happens? They've eaten all the valuable plants in the meadow, and what's left is what nothing wants to eat. It just, the pasture has been destroyed. It's deteriorated to brush, to something that no animal wants to eat. And that's what happens. And it's not the animal's fault. It's the fault of the humans who built the fence and locked up the animals in there. It's not natural for the animals to do that.
Yes.
What happens in a natural environment, in savanna in Africa, for example, or large grazing fields in Texas or Patagonia or somewhere else, the grassland community involves not only huge herds of herbivorous animals such as zebra or antelope or cattle or something else, but it also involves predators, lions and hyenas and cheetahs and wolves in Europe and other predators. And predators are vital to the grasslands economy, to the whole grasslands circle of life. Because what they do, they keep the herbivorous animals bunched and slightly nervous because there are predators around. So they don't choose their most favorite plants. They eat everything on the ground. They're a bit agitated. They eat everything on the ground. At the same time, they're urinating, they're defecating, inoculating the soil. No animal in this world wants to eat food contaminated by their own excrements. So once they've contaminated one patch of grassland, they move on.
They move on.
They move on. And lions and hyenas and cheetahs are the shepherds for these animals. They are the ones that make sure that the herds stay bunched together, that animals don't spread around, just choosing what they want to eat and what they don't want to eat. They eat everything under their feet. And they move on. And it takes about 4 months for the grass to regrow fully after the animals have eaten it. And it takes exactly the same amount of time for all the excrements to go into the soil and turn into the soil microbial community, to disappear. So these animals, this herd of zebra, are not going to come back to that place for about 4 months. And every time they cycle, so they keep moving on, they cycle. And every time they cycle through the same patch of grass, the humus gets thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. That's how topsoil has been created on our planet, by herbivorous grazing animals. The combination of the plants growing and the grazing animals. Another thing you need to understand, that every plant above the ground is about the same size as it is underground. It builds a huge extensive root system underneath the ground. The plants above the ground capture the sunlight, turn it into carbohydrates, into sugars through photosynthesis, and then send these sugars to the root system, to the roots. And that's how the roots grow. The extensive root system on the ground grows. Sugars are carbon, largely carbon. So when a cow comes along and bites that plant, the plant is gone, just a little stub is remaining with the growing point. All that big extensive root system underground dies to the same size. And when it dies, all that root system, all that carbon, that sugar turns into humus. That's how humus is created. You need animals to create humus. We need animals to capture the sunlight and to turn it into humus in the ground. You need the plants, the animals, and the predators. You need the whole grassland economy, grassland ecosystem. But what we humans do, we kill off all the predators, we build fences, and we lock up the animals in those fences. And that just will not do. Now we have enough knowledge that we must not do that. We cannot do that. What we must do, we must move our animals all the time. As soon as they've eaten grass in one patch, we move them and move them. And in the best setups, animals are moved every day. And because we have no predators, obviously we can't return wolves to our farms. That's impossible. We have electric fences, wonderful invention. We're not against technologies. Technologies are wonderful, they really help us. With electric fences, we can contain the animals, and they're very easy to build and take down and build again. So you can move the animals pretty much every day or every few days. We don't have many cows. We only have a fairly small family of cows. So we don't move them every day, but we certainly move them every week or every couple of weeks. So once they finish grass in one place, they are moved. And then the grass has a few months to recover and build the humus in the ground. And then you have chickens on the farm. We have 28 acres on our farm, so it's not a large farm. But our chickens, we don't know how many we've got.
Because they're everywhere.
They're everywhere, yes. They keep breeding. And every one of them is a harem walking with a cockerel, a couple of cockerels. And they're all territorial, they've got their own territories. They roam all over 28 acres. And every time a cow deposited her most precious, wonderful manure on the ground, flies lay their eggs in there, larvae hatch in a couple of days, and chickens are all over it because they eat the larvae, they eat the eggs, and they eat the flies. And they dig all that manure all over the place and they dig it into the soil. So
it's such a beautiful system. That as everyone is listening and getting goosebumps how this system works, it's a model of what's possible for all of us. It's really a model. There's a couple of questions that I have to ask you because they've posted them twice. But first, hello to Uyam in Bangkok and Tracy, Sherry in New Zealand, Mia in North Wales, Janice in Indiana, and the list goes on and on. Thank you all for joining us here today. And there was a question that came in that I'm trying to find now. Someone has fungus in their garden, and they're asking, what do we do about a fungus in the garden?
Fungi are a basis of life. They're essential for your soil. What happens that they're called mycorrhiza in the soil. That's just one variety of fungi. And fungi are an absolute basis for your gut flora. What happens in the soil? That the hair roots of the plant, are only the size of the plant above the ground. Fungi, mycorrhiza, attach themselves to every hair root, and then they grow myceli, whole network of myceli, which can be tens of meters, hundreds of meters, all around into a large area. And as they attach themselves to the hair roots, they deliver nutrients and water to the plant. So that way your plant will get nutrition and the water, not only from the immediate little area, but from a very, very large area. And through this network, this mycorrhizal fungal network, trees and plants communicate with each other. In fact, in a healthy situation, our whole planet is covered in a fungal blanket, in a mycorrhizal blanket. Trees which are miles away from my farm are talking to the trees on my farm through that mycorrhizal network. Not only water is sent and nutrients are sent, but hormones and neurotransmitters and messenger molecules, all kinds of molecules are sent through this mycorrhizal network. So fungi in the garden is very good. It's fantastic. It's very, very good. They will create real soil. And what we're doing, and what we're doing in our garden now, we're doing a no-dig gardening. Because remember, digging, plowing, turning the soil over, destroys the structure of the soil, displaces the microbes, and breaks down the mycorrhiza, breaks it down. So what people have invented, and it's wonderful, there's so much knowledge now. We don't need to even search anymore for knowledge. Is all there at our fingertips nowadays. It's all there. We have all the solutions to global warming, all the solutions to how to treat the soil, how to look after animals, how to create a farm that is a paradise, a farm where everything is happy, everything is thriving, the soil, the chickens, the animals, the gardens, the plants, the trees, everything. What we're doing a no-dig gardening, where we do not dig anymore. What you do, you establish beds and you establish paths. So nobody walks on beds anymore. Nobody's allowed to step on the bed anymore. That's a permanent bed. And when the spring comes, and of course there are weeds on the bed, you aerate the bed. You take a garden fork, you stick the fork in, you wiggle it a little bit, and then you gently pull it out. You don't dig, you don't turn the soil over. And then you push it in the ground again, a few centimeters away, wiggle it a little, and gently pull it out. So what you're doing, you're getting air into the soil, because fungi are aerobic, majority of them. They need air to thrive in the soil, and a lot of other microbes in the soil. And as you're doing this aeration with the fork, you loosen the soil. Then it's very easy to pull the weeds out, because the soil is now loose. And then once you've cleared the bed of the weeds, you pile about a foot of manure. It can be well-rotted manure or even fresh manure. Fresh manure is great because it'll heat up and keep the roots of your plants warm. And then on top of that manure, you put a foot of compost, of good quality compost. You level all that and you plant your seeds into that compost. After the plants have grown, in about a year, the manure underneath will all rot, create a fantastic microbial community, and the compost, it will all mix up, the worms will mix the whole up, and you create fantastic soil on your beds. And eventually you will not even need to add that much manure or that much compost. For a few years you will need to do that to build the soil. And that's what we've been doing in our gardens, and that's what we are doing. And you will be getting fantastic crops. And as you're adding the manure, that manure will suppress all the hundreds of years of seeds of weeds that are in the soil in your garden. They will not be able to grow because they're underneath that manure. They'll just burn and they will not grow. So very quickly, fairly quickly, in a no-dig garden, you will have no weeds. You'll just have your plants. The life of a gardener becomes much, much easier, because who wants to dig? That's hard work, isn't it?
Right. Who wants to dig is a very good
hard
question.
work, and it destroys the soil. So no-dig gardening is the best way to grow vegetables.
Well, that may be the name of your next book, The No-Dig Garden, right? Because
Possibly.
It's such valuable information. I hope that we get that information out to the entire world to use it. So in this question that was asked about the fungus in the soil, but there's also fungus on the tomatoes. So is it possible to have an overgrowth of too much fungi? And she's asking, what would she do for that?
Fungus on the tomatoes and potatoes, that's probably blight. It's called blight. So what you do when you plant your tomatoes and potatoes, you plant marigolds between them. Marigolds and basil. They will stop the blight. It's the best remedy for blight.
I used to plant marigolds around our tomatoes all the time as a kid. I remember my grandfather doing that, and I helped to plant that garden. So that brings back a lot of fond memories.
Yes, nature doesn't grow monocultures. Nature grows everything. If you look at a natural meadow, everything's growing in a mixture, complete mixture. So try to emulate that as much as possible. Obviously, we want some order in the garden. We don't want everything in a complete jumble. But if you make sure that there are maybe a row of tomatoes and then right next to it a row of onion or garlic, and if you intersperse garlic and marigolds and basil around your tomatoes and around your potatoes, there will be no blight.
So let me say hello to Leanne, who's watching. I know she's recovering today, and hi, Leanne. Thanks for being here. And hello to Diane in Wisconsin, Jackie in Liverpool, Rachel in the Philippines. The list goes on and on. Thank you all so much for joining. And as we're here's a question that I saw and it came again. Can you use manure from a meat-eating animal such as a dog?
You can. It's all right. Just leave it on the ground. It'll go into the ground. It will contribute its own microbes to it. But what I do, we have some horse stables not far away, and these people get a mountain of manure every few months, which they don't know what to do with.
Yes.
They just beg us to take it, so we come and take it.
They're so happy that you take it. Okay.
That's right, for free. We haul it all here to the farm. And we also have a tree surgeon company, a few young boys here who cut trees for people. And they chip most of that. So they bring all this wood chip for us for free as well, because they look for places to dispose their wood chip. And I said, just bring it here, darlings. And, and we mix that manure with the wood chip. Wood chip provides carbon because it's very, very high in carbon, while manure is very high in nitrogen and phosphorus and many other minerals. And we combine the three, that rots, and 6 months later, you have the best compost in the world. And if you add to that some biochar or some charcoal or some rock dust, we get some rock dust. I get a ton of rock dust from Scotland, from the granite quarry, ancient granite quarries, because granite and marble contain all the minerals that our earth is made out of in the right proportions, in the beautiful right proportions. So any marble quarry or any granite quarry that is nearby, when they cut the marble and the dust flies, they vacuum that dust. They set up these great big vacuum machines which suck up the dust, fill the bags with this dust, and it's called rock dust. It is sold as a rock dust. That is the best mineral supplement for soil. There has been 100 years worth of research into rock dust. So if you don't buy any other minerals, you don't want to buy single minerals. That doesn't work. You want to buy the full complementary balanced formula that Mother Nature has created, and that is rock dust. So if you mix wood chip with fresh manure and some rock dust, mix it up, leave it, you'll get the best compost in the world in a few months.
Let me say hello to Marion from the Dordogne, D-O-R-D-O-G-N-E is, I don't know what that is, Marion, but
France, Dordogne, yeah.
Dordogne, yes, okay. Margie says, it's Margie from Perth, Western Australia. Love being here. Thank you to Dr. Natasha. There was one who was it that just said, someone says, this is awesome. I'm watching from New Zealand. Thanks. And that's Sherry, Mia Jones in North Wales. And the list goes on and on. So thank you, everyone. Now, Dr. Natasha, you're talking about creating a healthy microbiome in the soil. And I know that in your most recent book, Vegetarianism Explained, you talk about the healthy microbiome of the soil. So can you tell us from your research and your experience, how does vegetarianism or meat eating contribute to the microbiome of our soil in our gut?
Absolutely. We have a world of nutritional misinformation, and the latest push in the mainstream is for vegetarianism. Our governments are going to publish recommendations to all the populations in the world that we should all be vegetarians, even vegans. And the medical profession has no idea, how that works. So they just neutral at best, or they even join that camp. So is there a problem with that? There is a problem, a very big problem. All the propaganda, vegetarians tell us that it is the healthiest lifestyle, that we will save the planet, that they're kind to animals, that they're kind to the planet, and they give you the same arguments over and over again, that instead of feeding all that grain to the animals, we should be feeding humans with all that grain. So let's look into that. I'm working with a lot of mental patients, and I was getting all these anorexic girls in my clinic. And almost 100% of them became anorexic because of misguided vegetarianism. And that spurred an intense interest in this subject. So I started looking into that. And the first thing I've discovered that there is no reliable science about vegetarianism in the world. There isn't. All the studies that are published about vegetarians have been done by pro-vegetarian lobby. They're skewed, they cannot be trusted, the studies. The data has been inappropriately analyzed, the studies have been designed inappropriately to achieve a particular result. So having looked at that, I've realized that there's no science to rely upon. So I looked at the basic sciences, at biochemistry, at zoology, at biology, and at clinical experience, which is a valuable scientific tool for us clinicians, clinical experience. And the result of all that study is the book, Vegetarianism Explained. So let me quickly explain this, how it all works. all the energy on our beautiful planet is recycled. The new energy comes to the planet from the sun. In order to capture the sunlight, Mother Nature created plants. They have photosynthesis, they have an ability to capture the sunlight and turn it into solid matter, into green matter that we can touch and we can eat. In order then for something else to consume the sunlight in the form of plant matter, Mother Nature created herbivorous animals. Cows, goats, deer, antelope, zebra, and other herbivorous animals. And in order for them to be able to digest the plant matter, Mother Nature equipped them with a very special digestive system, which is called rumen. A cow has a huge 4-chamber stomach called the rumen. And this stomach is full of microbes. That is where majority of her microbiome lives. Because the fact from zoology and biology is that no creature on this planet can digest plants apart from microbes. They are the only creatures on this planet who truly are able to break down plant matter, extract things from it, digest it properly. So that's the fact that Mother Nature used in creating the rumen of a cow. She gave her this huge stomach, 4 chambers full of microbes. So it's not the cow, not the zebra, not the antelope that digests the grass that they eat. It's the microbes in their rumen who do that work. And the interesting thing is that about 70% of all the carbohydrates in the grasses, because grasses are rich in carbohydrates, plants generally speaking are rich in carbohydrates, are converted into short-chain fatty acids in the rumen, which is a saturated fat. So a cow actually lives on a very high-fat diet. So does deer, so does zebra. And all of that fat is saturated. In order then for something else to be able to consume the energy of the sun in the form of herbivorous animals, Mother Nature created the next group of creatures on the planet, predators and omnivores. And that's where our human body belongs, in the group of predators and omnivores. We don't have a rumen. We have a small stomach. And if that stomach is healthy, it's virtually sterile. It has virtually no microbes in it because it produces hydrochloric acid. The acidity can go below 2, below 1, if we're hungry and if we're ready to eat. And that's an extremely hostile environment for any microbe to live in. So human stomach, as a result, is unable to break down plant matter. It doesn't digest. Plants are indigestible for human beings. But our stomach is perfectly designed with all its acid, with pepsin, with intrinsic factor, and all the other substances that the stomach produces, the stomach juice contains. It's perfectly designed to digest properly meat, fish, eggs, and milk, dairy products. So these are the foods that digest properly in a human stomach. And then they get passed into the several meters of intestines where absorption of the food happens. In the top part of it, bile is injected to emulsify fats, and pancreas injects its juices to complete the digestive process. And whatever's got digested properly gets absorbed to build our human body. If you take the human body and take away the water from it, about 70% of our bodies are water, the dry weight, remaining dry weight, is about 50-50, protein and fat. When we analyze that protein in a laboratory, we find that in its biochemical structure, it's very similar to proteins in meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. The same with fat. When we take human fat and analyze it in laboratory, we find that in its biochemical structure, it's very similar to fats in meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. So these are the only foods that are actually capable and able to feed and build our human bodies, to build our big, heavy bones, our big muscles, our big heart, lungs, liver, brain, all the other organs in our bodies, because they provide the most appropriate protein, the most appropriate fat, and they are the most digestible for the human digestive system. They digest properly in the stomach before moving into intestine and feeding and building your body. What about the plants? Plants contain lots of protein in them. But when we analyze that protein in laboratory, it's inappropriate for building our own protein. Certain amino acids are missing, other amino acids are in excess. The most researched protein from plants is gluten. Tom will tell you, can talk about for a week, probably non-stop about gluten. The more we research gluten, the more we realize nobody can digest it. Human digestive system is just incapable of digesting gluten. On top of gluten, there are other proteins that we're now starting to research in plants, which are just as damaging and just as indigestible and inappropriate for the human physiology. So all that protein in beans and in lentils and in nuts and in grains and so on, not only are indigestible for our human beings, they have an appropriate biochemical composition. They're incapable of building your protein. They're incapable of healing any wound, any damage in your body, in renewing, rejuvenating your body. Only animal protein can do that. The same with fats. Plants are full of fats. A lot of plants have a lot of oils in them. But when we analyze those oils in laboratory again, their biochemical composition is inappropriate for building our human fat. Certain fatty acids are missing, other fatty acids are in excess. It's nice to have them. We need them in tiny amounts. So when you eat a handful of nuts, when you eat lettuce or some other fresh vegetables and fruit, you'll get plenty of these polyunsaturated fatty acids, quite enough. But the bulk of fat consumption for building your fat, and about 50% of your dry weight is fat. Fat is not optional for human beings. It's a structural element of our bodies. Has to come from animal foods. That's the only appropriate fat. So in terms of nutrition and human composition, the feeding, building foods for us human beings are animal foods. What are the plants for? The plants are powerful cleansers. They're incapable of building your body, building or feeding or sustaining the physical structure of your body, but they have powerful cleansing substances, antioxidants, phenols, salicylates, all kinds of other phytonutrients, which keep our bodies clean on the inside. It's important for our human bodies to be well fed, well nourished, and to be clean on the inside. That's why we combine the plants with the animal matter.
So for all of those out there, by the way, there are not many people who can shut me up, and you do it really well. You are so great in creating the story and the vision that one easily can imagine imprints because of the clarity of your language. So thank you so much for that. And I don't ever want to interrupt that. But for all of you out there who are hearing this and it's rocking your boat, my premise in everything we do is be skeptical. Absolutely be skeptical. Don't take this at face value. Skepticism means I'm not sure I buy that. I'm going to look into it. Cynicism is that's nonsense. I'm not going to waste any time studying it. Now, here we have a world expert in human physiology who has helped tens of thousands of practitioners understand more of how to help their patients. And she's telling us about food selections and how our body works. Get her book, Vegetarianism Explained, and just review the information, look at the studies if you want to, wrestle with the concept, chew it, digest it, and see what you think. So Dr. Natasha is not saying don't eat vegetables. She's saying they're a critical component of our lifestyle, but she's saying meats, proteins from meats are a critical component of our lifestyle, and eggs and dairy are a critical component of our lifestyle. So my invitation is that every one of you go to Amazon when we're done here and order the book. Spend the $20 or whatever it is, order the book and just do your 1 hour a week. You know, maybe 1 week you're going to start diving into this and you're just going to start wrestling with this concept for you and your family. Because I don't know of anything that's more important to the health of you and your family than your inner soil. And how do you cultivate better inner soil?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, honey.
And a lot of vegetarians really believe a part of vegetarian propaganda is that they're being kind to animals and that they're kind to the planet and that they're saving the planet, all the ethical side of it, that they believe that it's ethical. Every one of these statements is a mistake, and it's based on ignorance. Because I'm an organic farmer, and I will tell you that the most difficult thing to do on an organic farm is to grow vegetable matter, to grow vegetables. to grow plants because the yield is unpredictable. It's difficult to grow plants. The yield is unpredictable because it rains at the wrong time and sun shines at the wrong time, and then you get a drought, and then some local farmer sprayed some chemicals on his field and all the insects ran away from them and found my organic garden. So you can do everything by the book, and yet you still don't get your yield at the end. You don't know what you will get. So it is impossible to feed even one vegetarian or vegan for a whole year out of a private organic garden. That's why vast majority of our modern vegetarians and vegans buy their food in supermarkets. They buy all their vegetable matter in a supermarket. Because for the arable industrial agriculture, it is the easiest thing to grow plants. Because agronomists, the scientists in the 60s, 70s, and 80s have worked it all out very, very well. The soil is dead, and that's fine. They don't even need soil anymore. Hydroponics now is a big part of it. You know, they grow plants without soil altogether. They worked out. Now you plant this and you spray this on day 1, you spray that on day 5, you spray this on day 14, you spray this on day 20, and it works. And here's a machine for that, and here's a machine for this for you. And it works. They get their yield, they get their green growth and their green fields. The yield of what is another question, because nobody's interested in that. Governments certainly are not interested, and these companies are not interested, because if you analyze that in a laboratory, you find that it's full of chemicals.
Full of chemicals and low in iron, low in boron,
low in minerals, low. The nutritional composition is very, very low.
Right.
However, when it comes to animals, it's a completely different matter. On an organic farm, my animals live according to the way Mother Nature designed them to live. They live on pasture. They eat food that Mother Nature designed them to eat, grass. Chickens, for example, which roam free, they eat a lot of grass, and that's what the color in the egg yolk comes from. Why do you think the egg yolk is supposed to be yellow-orange? That's the carotenoids in the grass that get converted by the body of the chicken into the carotenoids in the yolk, into vitamin A in the yolk. And that's where the color comes from. Do you know where the yellow color comes from in conventional agriculture, where chickens sitting in cages or in a barn, or even so-called free-range industrial agriculture where chickens still sit in the barn and they've got a little door to come into a concreted yard where there's nothing for them, so they don't go even there. And they call that free-range. The color in their yolks come from a dye, from a chemical paint dye that is added to the feed of the chicken. And of course, the difference is enormous. It's a world of difference. The real color coming from grasses that chickens eat, or from, so chickens must be on pasture. On top of that, chickens eat a lot of meat. They're meat eaters, they're carnivorous, they omnivores. They dig for worms, they dig for grubs, they dig for insects. That's their meat. Because an egg is almost pure protein. And that protein has to come from somewhere, and it comes from all these little creatures that the chickens eat. So on an organic farm, looking after animals is the easiest thing to do and the most pleasant thing to do. It takes about an hour in the morning and about an hour in the evening. You let them out in the morning, you throw some food for them, let them go, and they take care of themselves the whole day. And in the evening, you just put them back to bed. Give them a little bit of food again and put them back to bed. That's all the work.
You know, I asked you.
Yes, but in the industrial model, these things swap. The animal agriculture in the industrial model is the hardest thing for farmers to do. It is cruel, it's inhumane, and these are human beings. Farmers are human beings. It's immensely expensive because the animals are taken off the fields, off pasture, because the pasture has to be plowed to grow wheat and soya and other things for our vegetarians to eat. So the poor animals are put into prisons, into confined factory operations, where they stand in their own excrements, where they eat food that is inappropriate for their physiology, because all those pastures where they're supposed to be were plowed and grain is grown, and then that surplus grain, that excessive grain that is produced, is fed to these animals. Grain is inappropriate food for animals. Here's a news for you. Cows can have a little bit of grain as a chocolate, as a piece of chocolate at the end of the meal, but the meal must be grass. The same for chickens, the same for turkeys, the same for pigs. Grain makes them sick, all of these animals. So these poor animals spend a short, miserable life living in a cage, never seeing sunlight. So there's no vitamin D, the sunshine vitamin, in the milk or in the meat or in the eggs of these poor birds and animals, eating inappropriate food for their physiology. So of course they become sick. They develop cancer, they develop arthritis, infertility, all kinds of illnesses. So the first thing you will see when you walk through a gate of any animal industrial operation is a huge row of fridges, refrigerators, full of antibiotics, steroids, and other drugs, pharmaceuticals, because these animals simply can't survive. They would die without these medications. They have to be on medications all the time. And of course, all these medications go into the meat, the milk, the eggs, and they're expensive. So for industrial agriculture, producing meat, eggs, and milk is expensive, heartbreaking, very hard work, very wasteful, and it pollutes the planet, and it's cruel. It's just cruelty from dawn till dusk. It's a horrendous, horrendous cruelty. So of course nobody wants to do that. That is why industrial agriculture doesn't like animal rearing animals, and they love producing plants. That is the most profitable and the easiest thing for them to do. That is why the propaganda for vegetarianism, to make the whole planet vegetarian, comes from industrial chemical complex, from the companies which produce agricultural chemicals and agricultural machinery. That's the root of this propaganda, pro-vegetarian, pro-vegan propaganda. It's just done so cleverly through government agencies, through nutritionists, through dietitians, and through so on, that it's difficult to trace it to them, but that's where it comes from. But of course, it doesn't have to be that way. Another news that majority of the population of the planet doesn't know and doesn't have is that about 75% of humanity is not fed by industrial agriculture. These big arable, industrial people will tell you, oh, we're feeding the world. Not true. 75% of the world is fed by subsistence farming. These are people who live in the third world countries, in India, in Africa, in Asia, and other places, where they have a goat in the back garden, and they have their free-range chickens, and they have their little garden, and they have their pigs, and they have their animals. So these people are eating a much, much healthier diet, and they're keeping animals according to the way Mother Nature designed these animals to be and to live. And that's what we do on our organic farm. So you don't have to buy food from industrial agriculture. Supermarkets, I keep telling my patients and I keep telling everybody else that supermarkets are not a good place to buy your food. Sounds paradoxical, but do not buy your food in supermarkets, because supermarkets are stocked by industrial agriculture. All the plants there are full of chemicals, and all the meat, eggs, and milk are produced using industrial, cruel, inhumane, appalling methods. And they are full of chemicals and drugs and all sorts of things. If you go to your farmer's market, meet the farmers there, take their contact details, ask to visit the farm, come and visit the farm. See where the animals are, how they kept, what are they fed, how they look after, are they happy, these animals. It's important for the animals and birds to be happy. And then buy all your food exclusively from these farms. And that way you will not only provide your family with the best quality food, you will give a livelihood to a good person, a good farmer, who is trying to treat his animals with love, trying to treat his land with love, trying to do it properly. Future should be in the small, mixed, organic farms, because a proper farm should have everything on it. It must have animals and pigs and goats and chickens and turkeys and gardens and orchards. So when you've taken a crop from a piece of land, you can put animals on that piece of land so they restore the quality of the soil for a few years, and then you can grow another crop. So everything on a farm like that is in a rotation, and everything supports each other and supports the whole system. That is the future that is the only way humanity can survive on this planet, working in harmony with nature, rather than fighting nature all the time and destroying nature all the time. So if you want to be a vegetarian, you are not eating the healthiest diet at all, because what you're eating plants, you're subsisting on plants that are produced for you by industrial arable agriculture. It's not possible to produce it in an organic matter. Don't believe organic labels in supermarkets. Organic standards have been corrupted in the last 10 years by big industrial agriculture. They wanted a piece of the pie, and they've corrupted all the standards. A lot of stuff sold as organic in supermarkets, not organic at all. There are practices and chemicals there which should have no place in organic agriculture. You have to have close contact with the farmer, face to face, talk to the farmer, see how they grow things, then you can trust it. So there is nothing healthy in vegetarianism when you're buying your food from a supermarket, not whatsoever. And if you're a vegetarian and you think you're saving the planet, you are deluding yourself, because you're relying on the activities of industrial arable agriculture, and that is the major cause of global warming. They destroy the quality of the soil, they're turning our soils into deserts, so that soil cannot hold water at all. All the rains run off from there and flood the villages and towns downstream because the soil is destroyed. Humus in a proper field is a carbon polymer, and it holds almost 100 times more water than its weight. It swells like a sponge every time it rains on these meadows. But if that soil has been destroyed by arable agriculture and all the humus got destroyed, the soil cannot hold water. The water just runs off and floods the villages and towns downstream. So it's a major cause of flooding. Our industrial arable agriculture is a major cause of flooding in the world, not the dams and whatever else people blame it on. And all this water running off this field is full of chemicals, full of agricultural chemicals, which pollute our waterways, our lakes and rivers and streams. And the animals are dying in there and turn into hermaphrodites and whatever else is happening. There's a lot of research in this area. And you would be surprised how many tons of small animals are killed by agricultural machinery. Every time they plow the soil, every time they harvest, every time they do. How many birds, how many rodents, how many animals are killed by this machinery? There is nothing kind to the animals or kind to the land in a vegetarian lifestyle. In fact, you are supporting the very agriculture that is causing all the destruction on our planet and that is destroying our planet. And there is another way. Instead of, if you've seen a film where chickens are treated so cruelly in a chicken factory, the solution to that problem is not becoming a vegan, because you're actually feeding right into that system. You're supporting that system. The more plants you eat, the more you're supporting industrial chemical arable agriculture, because they produce all those plants for you. The solution is not there. The solution is to go to the farmer's market, meet the farmers, then drive around, visit the farms, find proper mixed organic farms, and start buying your food from these farms. You will provide a livelihood for the farmer, because governments subsidize the big arable agriculture, but they do not subsidize small organic farmers. In fact, they make their life very difficult. And the only farms that really survive very well are the ones which are supported by a large customer base, by people who buy food directly from the farms. Shall I continue talking, because Tom got frozen?
Okay, I'm back now. I'm sorry, I had a little technical difficulty, and so everyone knows I am not technically a geek, and I forgot to charge my phone, so my phone died. And I was using the phone to connect the computer to the internet, so I lost about 2 or 3 minutes of that, but I got all the rest of it. And Dr. Natasha, your ideas, in my opinion, right on the money. And you create such a large, beautiful picture of what's going on. It's a reality check. So, and I heard you say about support the farmers, go meet the farmers. So for all of you out there, going to the farmer's market is a first step. Some of you have heard me say before, a wheat-free diet is not the treatment for celiac disease. It's the prerequisite to the treatment for celiac disease. Going to the farmer's market is not the treatment to get healthy food. It's the prerequisite to the treatment to get healthy food. Go to your farmers, meet them, go visit the farms. That's a marvelous suggestion. so that people and families get more engaged with where their food is coming from. And from that perspective, we'll have more interest. We will talk to our friends, we'll talk to our representatives, and we all can do just little base hits, just small points in the direction of creating a planet making healthier food for all of us. I think that's critically important, just critically. So we thank you so much for that. We have a lot of questions that have come in. It's like boom, 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 because you're rocking their boat. And it's good to have your boat rocked. And once again, be skeptical, ask the questions, do a little research to find out. Would you have the time in the next day or two to take a look at our Facebook page here and see the questions that have come in? Because some of them I can't. I don't know about gardens and growth. So I will tell everyone that I will look at them, Marzi will look at them, and hopefully Dr. Natasha will take a look at some of them also and answer the technical ones so that you can get the answers to move forward in feeding your families healthier food. I promise that these Facebook Lives are an hour only, and we are on the hour. So as much as I'd like to go through a number of the questions that are there so others can answer them, people have asked me, please stay on time. So I'm going to stay on time here and honor that request and say, Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, thank you so much for joining us today.
That's a pleasure.
Your wisdom is wisdom that we all need to hear. We all need to embrace this. And please hang on after we turn off Facebook Live so you and I can talk for a minute. And so for all of you out there, thank you so much. We will, if you like this, like it on Facebook and share it with your friends. As you guys have heard me say, the more shares you do, the more Facebook says, oh, this guy's got something going on. And they give us a little more exposure so more people can hear these types of Facebook Lives. So please share with your friends who you think it's appropriate for. If your friends have gardens, share it with them. If your friends don't have gardens, share it with them. So that's pretty much all of your friends. So with that, I will say thank you all so very much. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.